Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today. We have Dudley Duncan. He's been a swim coach for north of 50 plus years, and he also decided to go from coach to business owner by building his own swimming facility where he was helping kids in the club swimming space. So, Dudley, how are you doing today? And how'd you even get into coaching swimming? It seems like such a niche area. How'd you get involved in that?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. And secondly, it was pretty random, actually, and by happenstance that I got into swim coaching. I knew from a pretty young age that I wanted to coach in athletics, and my favorite sport for participation through high school was wrestling. But I did swim through high school in the summers and during the high school swimming season, my last couple of years of high school. And so um, I actually got drafted into the service in 1968
Oh,
and
wow.
went to Panama and got moved from Panama to back to the States, and they changed my career field from radio operations to security police. So I was investigating a vandalism at a colonel's house, and he happened to tell me about his 5 kids who were swimmers on the Fort Bragg Aqua Dragons. And he mentioned along the way that they needed an assistant coach, and I quickly raised my hand and I said, I can do that because I had swum and coached one summer before going in the service.
Which is incredible because when you think about it, a lot of the time many opportunities come up like that, where it's like, I'm looking for a house cleaner, or I'm looking for someone to help out with the family, or I'm looking for someone to swim coach or basketball coach or do anything. And I just want to bring this up for the audience. Those become opportunities. Once you know about that, that becomes an opportunity and you can capitalize on that like Dudley did. Or you can just go, oh, I'm doing something I don't love, like blah, blah, blah. Or you could start seeing opportunities. So I want this to be a great visual for people so that they understand that opportunity is always knocking, which is awesome.
Yeah. So I ended up spending my whole last year in the Air Force coaching swimming. I didn't have a boss. I didn't live on the base, nothing. I was coaching swimming with for kids. And those kids were kids of Green Berets and, airborne troops and stuff like that. So they're really tough kids and did everything you asked. They're very disciplined. Then I went to college and went into physical education with the hopes of being a coach. And when I did the student teaching, I didn't like teaching in the school. And I was already coaching swimming too, all along through my college years. So I just kept doing it.
Yeah, I love that because there's so much of us nowadays where it's like, I'm not going to work until I have my college degree, or I might try working in something. And literally, the past 2 podcasts I've had, this one and the one before, they're like, yeah, I was already doing the job I wanted while I was in college. Like, because it's true. You gotta, if you enjoy something, just start doing it and getting the reps because it will help you so much more based on the other things, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, agreed. That's how it happened for me. And I just made a life of it.
Absolutely. So for you, where did swimming, how did that journey look for you? Like in the beginning when you were graduating college, was swimming like the direction? Was there other avenues? Were you looking at other things, or it was just I'm going all in on this? Because for me, it's very interesting for people to have such a focused area for so long. Because for my generation, I feel like people are constantly jumping, switching jobs, doing this, doing that, and it's like a lot of the other people, a little bit of the older generation, it's been like, hey, I was in the same fields for 40 years, like 50 years. That's a long time. So what kept you motivated, and what kind of got you started in it?
So these happenstances just kept happening. So I go back to college after the service and start on this physical education degree. And I was in a swimming class, of course, had to take it. And the coach for the swim team was teaching the class and pulled me out one day and said, "You need to come out for the swim team." So I go, okay. So I go out for the swim team, and he just finished coaching that year, and another girl took over who was Hall of Fame swimmer at Old Dominion. And so she's watching us swim and that. And she knew I was a little bit older because I'd been in the service, and asked me if I'd help her to start a team at the college there. And so I go, okay. So helped her do that. And the next year she left and she went
Oh
to
my God.
California. Yeah, so I ended up coaching for a couple more years there, and then it was time for me to graduate, and I wanted to go to graduate school,
Wait,
and
so what's that? So as a student, you're coaching the team?
I was coaching a club team at the
Okay.
university where I was attending, which was Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia.
It's
And
incredible.
yeah, one of the families ended up paying for a graduate assistantship for me to stay on, keep coaching the team, and get my master's. And so that worked out. I did that. And then I applied for the job for coaching the collegiate team at Old Dominion, which I did not get. And I had applied for another job too, which I did not get. So I had a couple of swimmers that had qualified for junior nationals, and they were in Gainesville, Florida. So I drive down there, and I have a bag of resumes that I handed out on the deck to see if I could find a job. And I got hired by the 1972 Olympic coach at Indian River Community College. He wanted to start up a program in Vero Beach, Florida,
Oh wow.
that was very close to the school. So I took that job. I worked there for 10 months, enjoyed Vero Beach very much. And 10 months later, the guy that this club team hired instead of me, they fired him. So they called me and asked me if I would be interested in coming back to Virginia. And I go, yeah, okay.
How
So
how was how was the Olympic working for the Olympic coach? Like
amazing.
standards, values, how was that? What was the biggest takeaway there?
A huge role model, just huge. I mean, he really established a consciousness for me for elevating performance to the highest levels. And so to be honest with you, if not for him, I don't even know if I would have ever developed that, but by the time I left 10 months after he hired me, I was already thinking, about kids reaching the national, international level swimming.
Yeah,
So,
I,
yeah,
I just want to bring this up because it's so important for people to try to get around if they're looking to do a new skill or looking to gain something. You want to get around the best person you can get around in that attribute so that you can learn what they're doing to see the caliber that they're at. Because it will completely change your baseline when you sit there and go, wow, that was different. Like that, like because we all want to do this self-imposed, like, oh, we can make each other better, we can do our own thing. But like when you're really around someone who has a higher standard, you can feel it and it changes you and your mind expands on that.
that's a great insight, really. And he was that. His name was Jim Montrella. And originally he was from Lakewood. He coached at Lakewood, California, had a great club program there, and, became an Olympic team coach. And so just listening and interacting with him about his thoughts on things really elevated me to a new level.
It's so early in your career, it's just a blessing.
Mhm.
And then so you go back to Virginia. What happens there with this club coaching?
So when I interviewed for the job, after they fired that guy, there were only 12 kids swimming there that summer. But the club was running a bingo game, and so they could pay me more than I was getting paid. out of that. So I decided to go back, and in the fall, 75 swimmers came out, and they were pretty good swimmers, really. They were decent um, swimmers at a state level. And we began to move them along from there. We took second at the YMCA Nationals in
Oh wow.
1983, I think. And then our women took third at the USA Swimming Short Course Nationals a few years after that. So kids were developing. And then in 1988, which was a couple of years after uh, no, the year before, actually, we took that third at nationals. We had, I think, around 8 or 9 kids at Olympic trials, and we
Oh
had
wow.
one girl make the Olympic team in 1988.
That's
Whitney
incredible.
Hudspeth was her name.
That's incredible. And what's the major difference coaching something like club swimming opposed to like lacrosse, football, basketball, baseball, like any other sport? Like what makes club swimming so unique?
Mm. I'm glad you asked that. As one of the reasons that drove me to write the book, because club swimming is very different. It's number one, it's year round. So kids typically, their families will sign a yearly contract rather than month to month or something. And the second thing is you have kids that you're working with usually for about a decade of time, 8 years old, roughly, maybe a little bit before until they graduate at 18. So you're working with those kids through a lot of stages of normal human growth and development. And so that's very unique. I mean, you might be working with a kid when they're 10 years old and they're a totally different kid when they're 14, you
I can
know.
only imagine.
So those are part of the deal there. And then the competitions are usually about 2.5 to 3 days on a monthly basis
Oh
of
wow.
competition. Use oftentimes preliminaries and finals. And the kids are swimming varieties of events. So you might be swimming one day a 50 freestyle and the next day a mile. You might be swimming, 400 IM, 200 IM,
What's
200
I am?
free, individual medley. So that's a combination of all four strokes in one event.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, so I mean, they're doing a lot of things. They say that aerobic development is best developed with kids between the ages of about 14 and 17. So you're dealing with that. So all those things put together get wrapped up in this debate that happens in US swimming and probably all over the world. How much do you do? Do you focus on speed? Do you focus on endurance? Do you choose certain events that you want to um, train and so on? So you develop a philosophy based on what you want to do in that regard. And then finally is the business area. So normally the clubs are run by parents of swimmers who are on a board of directors. Typically, the board of directors will have an odd number of directors between 7 and 13.
Okay.
Uh, and they control the club. They really raise the money and set,
Set the
help the
standard.
coach,
Yeah.
but in the end, they really control everything. So that's good. They are really well-meaning and a hard-working group of people typically, but they're not professional at the sport.
Well, well, I mean, also if you consider changing out 13 different opinions, and then as the kids age out, then they're like, I don't care about this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because part of it's probably their children that they want to see do well and raise the funds for that. I mean, they might just really enjoy the swimming culture, but it becomes very interesting where it's like, who's incentivized for each of these activities? So as a coach, you think one of the biggest friction points is these two concepts of what's the best use of our time and do you own the operations that you're in?
Yeah. typically they'll also have a limited term. So
Oh, okay.
they're going out, every 1, 2, or 3 years.
Yeah.
That has the potential to change over philosophy in the program because they're in control. So yeah, ultimately I came to a point where I had an opportunity to buy my own pool property and develop a business, a private business on my own. So I was able to do that. And one of the things that I wanted to share with coaches is that it is possible to do that. Most of the time, coaches go, if I had my own pool, I could do this a lot better,
Yeah.
and they all go, but I can't buy a pool, it's too expensive, or they don't know how to do it and
But
whatever. So
but
one of the
those
emphasis in the books is to help them with that.
yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest flaws that people have with mindset. And it's not just swimming coaches or anybody, it's everybody. We all have limitations on going, that's too expensive. Well, if someone's done it before, then we can do it as well. And Dudley here is just being an example of, hey, I was a swim coach. I ended up buying my own facility, and this is how I did it. And he shares that in the book, which is called The Art of Swimming and the Game of Racing. And I just say all this because it's important for us not to be limited by what we believe to be possible. So, like, if someone's done it before, we can do it too. And I felt those same constraints with the podcast, where I'm like, who am I to start a podcast? Why can I start a podcast? And it was like, just start and then lift your head up and see how you did. As long as you keep a weekly cadence, see what happens. And
Yeah.
it's putting yourself out there for the opportunities. So what was really the biggest point where you woke up, like kind of like saw, I need to have my own pool, and now I'm going to start looking for this.
I was 56 years old when I bought the pool. Uh, and uh, I was still, I mean, I was buying the pool, but I was also buying a team, if you will, that came along with the pool. So, and in the beginning, I was by myself. So, I didn't really have a staff, or I didn't have anybody to depend on. So I really needed to depend on myself. And um, that worked out really good, I think, because the money part, I simply took over a mortgage of on a on a loan that was $225,000, and I didn't have to put any money down because I assumed the mortgage. That's what
And why would the seller do that for you? Because right now is the part of the podcast where we're kind of transitioning because me and Dudley had an intro call and I go, you want to be a swim coach and you are a swim coach, but like this is real estate that we're talking right now. So it's how he got into business and kind of did the real estate plays that you'll see there's two or three of them that really like propelled everything for his main goal. So it's very important to expand your horizons and see what is possible. So how did you even get an assumable loan?
so I had started another business too, which was a pool management business,
Okay.
where the company would take these pools that open for the summer, hire all the lifeguards and train them and operate the pool over the summer. So I was familiar with the market of those pools. And this particular pool, the community had gotten older. There weren't as many kids swimming. They didn't want to operate the pool anymore. They weren't motivated to do that. They didn't want to raise their fees either, for someone else to do it. So that's how I was able to find the pool and get in on that mortgage.
So,
And
sorry,
go
Dudley,
ahead.
but you start to see this, right? So Dudley doing the swim coaching, then he goes, yeah, I'm going to start another business. It's basically a service business, which are the easiest ones to and the lowest cost to really get started because you're just trying to grab the clientele and then you'll hire within. Like that's what I do with my coaching. It's a service business. They're super low barrier to entry, but you can get started with them and start making some cash flow. So Dudley's literally doing this, but it allows him to prospect. Each of his oncoming clients becomes now a prospect for a pool that he can purchase, which is incredible. It's a great way to be like, I'm gonna go find a pool. Like It's like, no, let's just go make some money, start another side business that transfers us, that forces us to do things. So I say this because I think the audience needs to realize that each activity you do causes you to do different things. Like, for example, the podcast causes me to speak to people who motivate me and I think are unique because I have to put out a new podcast every week. So it's like, oh, Jordan, you're being forced to speak to new people. That's the output. You want to figure out the output and work backwards and make it your input because when you're able to do that, then you live a very optimal life. Because for me, I wanted to meet really cool people. And now I've attracted a space where I get messages every single day. Can this person come on your podcast? Can this person come on? Can this person come on? And it allows me to meet. It's this container that allows me to meet all these really amazing people. And everybody can do this. You just have to work backwards to figure out how you're going to do it.
It sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
It's a good time.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, $225,000 at the time was about what an average home would cost,
Yeah.
for a middle class person trying to buy a 3-bedroom ranch or whatever. And I thought, golly day, man, if I'd have done this when I was 30 years old, I bought my first house when I was 30, pretty close to 30, and it was $50,000 for that house. So I could have gotten in on my own, even at the age of 30 for, just that small amount of money.
And
And
the
I could have
swimming
controlled
part.
my destiny.
Yeah, because what was it? Run me through what was your mindset 30s, 40s, 50s as you're doing? Were you having friction which was going on that caused you to kind of look for this pool opportunity, or was it just like what was it? Because most people at your point at 56 are like, I'm retiring, man. Like, I'm gonna throw in the flag. It's only 10 more years. Who cares? But you were like, no, I'm going for it. It's kind of like the KFC guy starting at 65. Like, it's a cool story.
I was sort of starting over actually in my mind. I I guess another side story is that I had sat in a meeting of coaches of various sports that were in the Richmond, Virginia area. And we were in that meeting because there was a business, I guess, called the Richmond Sports Backers. And they collected all of the coaches around the area, or a handful of them, and asked them, what do you really need? And all of us needed the same thing, facility. We wanted to
Yeah,
get a better facility, and I thought, this is crazy, man, for all of us to try to build these things separately. We should do it together and maybe do it on a complex. And then I started thinking we could almost develop an Olympic training center locally.
yeah,
And so I started working on that. I formed a nonprofit 501(c)(3) myself and started working on it. And that ended up being a conflict. Uh, in about 4 or 5 years, the board of directors, the president was talking to a guy who was president of a community college and decided that that was an avenue to pursue for a facility. So in the end, that didn't work out. I wasn't really willing to give up what I was working on, but they didn't want me to do that either. So they voted on a resolution saying that nobody could work on another project while they're talking to this community college president. So I resigned, and then I worked in the pool management business that I had started for a couple of years, and then I bought my own, so yeah, I was still pretty motivated. I was healthy at that time and really wanted to do this. So
yeah.
yeah,
No, I just think it's so cool because most people we we view these things as setbacks and they usually bring us down. But when you view it as like, hey, this is motivation, my time's opening up, I get to see these things a little bit better, I can actually think clearly, it becomes a real opportunity. And I think that's pretty amazing.
yeah, it did become an opportunity. That's the way it worked out. I felt terrible about the separation from the team that I had coached for 11 years.
Of
And
course.
in fact, I had coached it really in a way for 22 years because we merged two teams to form that one. So yeah, a long time, a lot of relationship and everything. I felt really bad about it. And then yeah, just about the time I was sort of beginning to think, day to day about different things, then this other opportunity pops up and I go, I'm in.
Yeah.
There we go.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's only so many times where you really see something and can take advantage of it. So I think it's awesome. And I want to, I bring this up a lot, but it's the Steve Jobs quote where we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only hope that they connect looking back. So it's all of these little things we did where you worked on the facility idea for a few months to the pool management to where it all had the culmination of like, hey, we're actually going to buy our own pool and start this team and do this thing that it all made sense because you had all the prior pieces and you were able to put them together, which I think is awesome.
Pieces and the motivation, I would say.
Motivation. Absolutely. So what was it like once pool ownership happened? Like, did everything change for you or what was that experience like?
It didn't really change from a coaching standpoint. I began to develop a little bit as a business owner more. That other business I started, I had a partner and he worked the business and I just provided some money. So this one actually, I not only had to learn to operate the business, I really, I had to operate the facility, cut the grass, weed, clean the bathrooms, everything.
So
Uh,
people don't really realize that when you start any business, there's always three roles. It's the employee, the manager, and the owner. And the funny thing is, when you're a small business, you're all three of them, but you do different tasks that imply different things. So, like an owner decision would be, hey, let's assume the loan. Like, I think that's a good move. A manager activity might be checking that the bathrooms are cleaned or that the pool is functioning. And then an employee is actually going and teaching those different tasks. And like I said, it's tough in the beginning for any small business because you're everything.
yeah. Yeah. And the big one is once you hire somebody to help you, the next thing you know, you got to make payroll every month. And that was really hard to do from a cash flow standpoint for a number of years, but you're always able to find a way to do it somehow, just
What was that pressure like? Because did you think to yourself like, why am I doing this at some points? Like what kept you going? Because I feel like the challenge is there and it's a different dynamic.
no, I didn't ever think about not doing it,
Right.
oddly. Yeah, no matter what I was doing. Sometimes I would be really tired, and think, God, if I could just sleep for a little bit, I think I could catch up. But in the end, never had any thought but making it, and
Yeah.
I did whatever it took to make it month to month. And I was so in the moment all the time in those early years. And then eventually it started to grow so the zoning was really important in making it happen. And I didn't rezone it until about 17 or 18 years into the business, but it was zoned residential because it was a homeowners association.
Okay.
And it was valued in that zoning. The appraised value was, I think, $468,000 in 2017 or something like that. And I had it rezoned because I wanted to build a teaching pool on the campus on the property.
Yeah.
And I didn't have enough money to do it with that zoning. So somebody advised me to rezone it. So I had it rezoned and it was rezoned commercial. Well, the appraised value after the rezoning was 2.62 million.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, 2.2 million more. And people don't realize these little things that are like, yeah, someone tossed me a tip that I should rezone. If you don't go out of your comfort zone and you don't go telling people, hey, this is my dream. I want to be doing this. I want to be having a teaching pool. How can I do this? Then no one ever gives you that idea. And think about what if someone asked you to rezone 10 years earlier? It would have been like, whoa, like we can really get flow in here. And it's these little things where we just we get so focused on what we're doing day to day that it's hard for us to lift our heads up and look at the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I was so busy day to day, I didn't have time to bring it to my consciousness, and then finally, when I was just committed to building this teaching pool, which was going to cost 1.7 mil.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I just go, I've got to resign and see what happens from it. And what happened from it was wonderful, actually. So now we have a teaching pool. The lesson program, Learn to Swim, is making a lot more money,
Oh wow.
and cash flow is good. So, the guys that are running it now have a really good business to run.
And people don't that's another good point you brought up, Dudley, is that the business dynamic, sometimes it takes a certain amount of customers to really create the cash flow where it makes sense. Because there's only so many employees and there's only so many things, but you have to get economies of scale where it starts to make sense. And like Dudley was saying, sometimes it takes two pools. Sometimes it takes a huge investment. Sometimes it takes all these things to get the business flowing, which I think is absolutely incredible. And it's amazing that like did you feel like you had any changes in your life? Because I feel like your risk tolerance. So Dudley, for you, when you think about risk, how did you think about risk in your 30s, 40s, 20s? And then because it seems like when you were in your 50s, you actually made the move. So what was it that really changed? I know we talked about the change up in the work environment and those kind of things, but were you always thinking I want to own my own pool? Was this always a thought of yours?
Definitely was always a thought. Like I mentioned earlier, many coaches had said this to me before, that if they own their own facility, they could do the job better. And I felt that way as well. Not that I had any hardship with any board members up until that point. I didn't, they were all good and they were all part of the solution most of the time. So, yeah, but with risk itself, I haven't been afraid of that uh, as I've lived through life, I guess. And I think it's because I tend to live in the moment I'm in. I tend not to think about what happened in the past and what might not happen in the future, from that perspective. So, uh,
Yeah. The presence is a real gift. Most people end up having issues if they're too much in the past, too much in the future. But when you're in the presence, it's always such an exciting thing. So, and I could see that because I think with the activity of coaching swimming, like the people are in the moment, the kids, yourself is in the moment. Like I feel the most in the moment when these podcasts happen because I don't have my phone going. It's just me and the person, and I understand that and that's what gets people to be the most authentic them. And then my other question was regarding resourcefulness. So a lot of people think, like you said, oh, I don't have the resources to buy a pool. What made you think that this was even possible with the resourcefulness? Like, has that always been something in your life? Because Tony Robbins says it's not the resources you have, but it's how resourceful you become that allows for your success.
um, I actually, with the business I started previously, I mentioned that I had a partner. And with this, when I bought this pool, I bought it with partners as well. Although I didn't need them because I did all of the work. They weren't involved in any of the work at all. And all of the people that came to the pool and paid their money were doing so because I was there. They came to be coached. So I bought out the partners, over time. Um, and they really didn't affect the business. My one partner that was in the pool management business helped me sometimes when I had a problem with maintenance,
Yeah.
but otherwise, yeah, it was mine. I worked it, and
So you don't
ultimately,
think you need to, like in the future, you wouldn't bring partners in unless they're really needed or
right.
identify what people are actually bringing to the table.
Yeah. It's not that I would advise against doing that. It may be helpful to have a partner, especially if the partner is a help.
It's just the
because
skill set that
you
people
need
are
some help.
bringing to the table.
Yeah. But in this situation, I really, I could have done it by myself.
Yeah,
And I probably would have preferred to do that rather than go through the mechanisms of buyouts and stuff like that.
absolutely. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. So tell us, why'd you write this book? And what's so special about this book, and who should be looking at the art of swimming in the game of racing?
And I mentioned to you the three big reasons that I wrote the book: to differentiate club swimming and to focus a little bit on the training and how the training differentiates from the science that's typically, put into science books about training athletes. And then the third thing was the business. But the other part of it that ended up happening is I think that there are a lot of insights and suggestions maybe for people that are broader than just the sport of swimming. I talk a fair amount about experiences I had with education and things that times when I hurt myself, with respect to education, and at times where my education was so helpful to me. I really appreciated it a lot. And there's, the swimming, the part that's the mental game and the goal setting that goes along with that. There's a lot of attention to that, and it's fairly in depth. Um, and that even goes what I talked about, where kids are young, they don't really need a serious goal setting sessions or anything. But by the time they're teenagers, there's a lot of pressures on kids, coaches trying to want them to succeed, and parents want them to succeed. And then there becomes money involved because they spend money, so they want to get it back in scholarships, those kinds of things, travel, a lot of pressures on them. So they have to be able to not only goal set, to create the process itself for how they intend to reach their goals, but also to withstand the pressure elements that go along with the sport. And they are more and more significant the higher you go on the ladder. So
Absolutely.
those are
No,
things in the book that are, I mean, that's true with anything.
100%. I was going to say, like, literally, Edwards Consulting is based off of goal setting, where it's you have your mindset, you have the accountability, you have what you're looking towards. And what we don't realize most of the time, anyone who operates at a high level, the Olympic level, they can literally take that skill and apply it to so many different subjects. And it's just because it's all the same stuff. You need the same intangibles and the same values to be success. Like to show up to swim at the pool every day at 6 a.m. means that you didn't go out the night before. And in high school, that's very challenging. Like these are all variables that people have to make decisions on. And you start to realize somebody's character based on the decisions they make. And to do it for 50 plus years is that's a lot. It's very impressive. And I just want to give you major props for that, Dudley, because most people can't say they did that. And it's pretty amazing how you would continue to put yourself into these uncomfortable situations of learning the businesses, of learning the different ownerships and all these different pieces, because most people are like, oh, I want to be a swim coach, but now I can't. So now I took a job that I hate. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you easily could have done that, but you chose not to, which I give you major props for. And I think that's very inspiring to all those listening and to myself.
Thanks a lot. That's what I hope for, is that other people will benefit from my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Dudley, where can people learn more about you and where can they learn more about the book?
I have a website. It's dudleyduncan.com. And there's a bunch of different elements there, of course, things that have happened recently, things that apply to the book specifically, and ways to get in contact with me and that sort of thing if you're interested in me doing anything with you. So yeah, that's the main way. You can also buy the book on the website. It's an audio book also, narrated by me. never thought I could do that either. Reading a book like that out loud is kind of an interesting task as well. But yeah, so you can do that, and the printed versions I'll inscribe and sign, from the website. If you buy a book on Amazon, you get the book, um, and
But
it's cheaper.
the
Yeah,
website gives the personal touch. I think that's absolutely incredible. I'm gonna put all that in the show notes, and I just appreciate your time and your wisdom. I think this was pretty awesome.
thank you, and I appreciate you being patient with my dog.